Okay, Shaun, can you tell us how this conversation played out to reach the point that we have today?
Yeah, we've been talking with Paul over the last couple of weeks, Rob and myself, and the decision was made that it was probably time for Paul. He's done an amazing job over the last 10 years of the club, particularly over the last 2 years with the ALeague women. He's taken them to a place where we've evolved it from where it was the first couple of seasons, but ultimately we've fallen short of what we wanted to achieve as a football club in the ALeague women's space, and it was felt that it was time to look at something different and continue that evolution with somebody new.
Was there a point at which you were considering going around again with Paul?
Look, I mean, all the way through the season, Paul was the guy. And then I guess as we sort of got further and further into it and the playoffs were becoming unrealistic, the decision was taken, that it was time to look elsewhere.
So is that where the women's program is now? That obviously the first couple of seasons were difficult, being away, all that sort of thing, but is now top six almost a minimum requirement for the women now?
Yeah, particularly in the women's space. I think the investment from the owners, from Rob and Henry, and the Lloyd Morrison Trust is significant in the ALeague women's space. Compared to the ALeague men's space, we operate at a good level of budget for players and also staffing. We've probably got one of the biggest football departments in the league, so there is a high expectation on that program.
Have you started thinking about a successor?
It's early days. Obviously, this has only sort of come to fruition in the last couple of weeks. We'll take some time now I'll meet with the players next week and sit and review with each of them and spend some time with the coaching staff and get some feedback from them. Obviously had some discussions with Paul around his thoughts and where it can go. So we'll pull that all together and then start the process of trying to find a successor.
What is the time frame for that?
I mean, ideally we'd like to do it sooner rather than later. We'll get through that review process in the next week or so and then start looking and seeing who the right person is to take it to the next level.
Do you expect a high quality pool of candidates?
I would think so, in terms of where we sit in the ALeague women's space and what we're prepared to spend on the ALeague women's program. I think we can expect to have some high quality candidates come out of the woodwork.
What is the status of the two assistants, Amy and Tori, at the moment?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, the assistant coaches, right? I mean, as a football club, we like to give the head coach the ability to, particularly with the assistant coach, it's quite an important role and it's quite an important relationship. But in saying that, there's not a depth of female coaches currently out there. So, what we've seen of Amy and what we've seen of Tori particularly, we're really impressed. Paul's been really impressed with them as well. So, ideally, we would like to keep them at the football club. Tori is with us through to the end of the year anyway in a dual capacity role with the academy, coaching the under-18 women's team who play in the Central League. So, we're not so rushed on that one. But yeah, we'll continue to have conversations with Amy and obviously I'll speak with her in the next couple of weeks.
Will Emma Humphreys be considered for the role as she is your current?
Emma's pretty settled in the academy at the moment. She signed a 3-year contract there, and she was pretty focused on that role and what she wanted to do there. At the moment, I don't think she has the interest in the ALeague women's space. So, and then she's doing incredible work down there at the moment. So we don't really want to upset the apple cart there.
Are there players the club is actively trying to retain, or will you wait until the new coach is in to make those decisions?
We'll probably wait now, I think. Again, we've got some conversations with some players next week. So, first and foremost, we have a number under contract, scholarships and some of the younger players who are progressing well. So that's good. It's good to have that depth there. In terms of players coming off contract, we'll have conversations next week to see where their heads are at, what their thinking is. But as far as committing to players at this stage, I think it's probably a little bit too early.
And would the Phoenix ever consider Bev Pressman as when her ban does lapse? would they ever consider that?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, that's a quality coach right there, right? So, I mean, if that presented itself as an option, we would be silly not to consider it, right? But that's That's probably a big fish.
Thank you.
Can I comment on Paul?
Please.
Yeah, look, I would reiterate some of what Paul said there. You know, he's been an incredible coach within the football club, academy director for a long time as well. You know, what he's done, particularly through that COVID period where, you know, the men's team and the women's team were based overseas, and he sort of was left there to carry the can with that, with Domi. And to get through that period and then to grow it to where it is today with the 5 boys teams and the, you know, 3 teams, 3 female teams. You know, he had the vision to see where we wanted to go with the ALeague women's space and to get that established and set up. And you know, the work he's done there and the work he's done for the club is incredible. You know, it's a sad day when you lose someone out of the football club like that, and we just wish him all the very best for his future.
What's his best moment? Can you recall a moment that you like?
Well, I think you've got to probably have a look at some of the first ups, you know, in his ALeague women's coaching career. You know, some first wins on the road, the debuts for Macy, the selling of Macy. You know, that was you know, testament to Paul, the work he did in the academy with her. But there's, I think Paul alluded to it, you know, there's so many highs when you look at all the players he's sort of helped develop. Not just on the female side, but on the male side coming through the academy, right? So, you know, he's spoken about Ben Old, there's Alex Paulson, you know, Finn Sermon, Ben Wayne. A number of guys came through under his tenure. So, yeah, there's a lot of highlights.
Is there going to be a massive send-off in Boydell Park?
I hope so. I hope we get a good crowd and everyone gets out, and you know, there's lots of applause for him, and you know, there's potentially players that won't be returning. So. You know, hopefully we can get a good number there on Easter Sunday, and it's a good celebration of the season, even though it hasn't been the success we wanted, but a good celebration of the season and the people that were involved with it.
You've got some decisions in the men's space as well, Gilly. Can you give us an update there?
Yeah, discussions are ongoing with Chiefy, and let's see what the next week or two presents.
Are there any parallels between the two programs, or do you really look at them in isolation? I mean, the men aren't going to make the top 6 either. Does that make a, you know, if the women don't make the top 6, the coach goes? That doesn't necessarily follow that if the men don't, the coach goes?
Yeah, look, I think they are separate. They are different. They're 2 different beasts, so you have to look at them separately. You know, it's not just the case of Paul not making the top 6 this year. You know, we've 2 seasons, and it's felt there's a new voice needed for there. You know, Chiefy still has... I think some credit in the bank off a fantastic season last year and what he did last year. So yeah, I mean, there's still discussions to be had with Chief.
And sorry, just a final one on that time frame. Like, so we've got a decision here just before the final game of the season. Is that likely to be similar for Chiefy? Their last game is front end of May. Is that likely to be when a decision or an announcement is made around the men's?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the stress, sorry, not the stress, the pressure point with the ALeague men's space, right, is you have a 4 or 5 week off season and then you start again. So, you know, we have a little bit more time in the ALeague women's space because the pre-season won't start till September. But in terms of the ALeague men's space, you know, we need to be back in 1st of July, ready to go. So, yeah, there's more pressure there to get things done and start moving on recruitment, retention of staff, etc., etc.
And does it make it trickier to chat to players when there's no real concrete you know, decision around the coach?
Look, in terms of players we've got, we don't have a lot coming off contract, and it's widely known a couple that are off contract are moving on anyway, right? So no, the conversations are not difficult. There's, you know, probably 1 or 2 in there that we're talking to at the moment about returning. In terms of any new recruitment, yeah, we just wait till the coach is in place for that.